All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another round of Fit Nation Lunch and Learn. Today we got an awesome guest joining us today. You guys might recognize him from the webinars that we did when we first kicked it off. It's Sheldon Mcbee, the Director of Personal Training at Universal Athletic Club. Sheldon, thank you so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you as always. I love chatting with you guys and the groups listening. So, yeah, very excited to be here.
Yeah, very excited to have you on again. For those who have joined us, obviously you know a little bit about Sheldon, but I know that we're constantly getting new people who are joining the webinars, and this is the first time. So Sheldon, if you can you give us a little bit of overview of your background, how long you've been working in the fitness area, and maybe even how you first landed in the career of fitness in general?
Yeah. So, back, I won't say how many years ago, I did my bachelor's degree out of high school. And at the time I was studying biology. I moved on to do my master's degree in nutrition. And at the time, I just thought to myself, hey, I really enjoy helping people, working with people, some of the same basic motivations that many personal trainers probably had. And it started off as a part-time gig to get me through grad school to personal train while I finished my master's degree. And it just kind of blew up. I was at a facility in Delaware. My business did really well, and it just held on to me. And as I moved to Pennsylvania, where I am now, this was about 19 years ago. I ended up working at Universal, building a great book. I was brought on with Les Mills as one of their international master trainers, which I was very, very blessed and fortunate. They kind of flew me all over the world, where I had a lot of great touch points and networks of people globally on what they do, how they operate, and it gave me real inspiration to then come back to Universal after 10 years with them to now direct their department of personal training. And now, of course, I do a lot of presentations and talks on business operations, personal training, operations, and sales. So that's the gist of how I got into this. But the heart of it really came from just being passionate about movement and fitness. I was always kind of the heavier kid growing up. And so I said, look, I'm going to turn that around. Just got me locked into exercise and fitness. So I see some of the people who are from all over the country here in the world. What's up to you guys?
Yeah, was looking in the attendee side as well, and I saw people from Switzerland in there, the U.S., the U.K. So we got people from all over who are joining today.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And when it sounds like you had an opportunity as well in order to go uh, in multiple roles. Then started off as a trainer, moved into the management and operations.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what you saw change within the industry? How it evolved since when you first started, and maybe how it's evolved and your perspective has changed as you move through different roles.
Yeah, so starting off as a trainer, then moving into kind of group fitness and international group fitness work, training again, managing, directing, and then looking deeper into that. Really, one of the biggest things is quite obvious. Technology obviously has moved to the forefront of everything. We saw wearable technology skyrocket to the top of worldwide trends quite recently. It hasn't gone anywhere. Obviously, being now that we are getting on the other side, hopefully quite soon, of a pandemic, that and even before that, online training, streaming is becoming more and more prominent. Also, one thing I really saw over the course of my career was that the idea of training. There were two evolutions that I saw from a director standpoint that were meaningful. One is that training got more about smarter training, more intelligent training, safety and corrective, and being prescriptive in nature. And the way social media changed the face of what a fitness professional could and should look like. So on two different extremes, we saw the side of training that said, let's train and condition people smarter, not crazier and harder. And then you saw on the other side, which was let's social media influencers and how they are impacting our industry, who may or may not really be experts in this, are impacting our consumers, our clients, and it's forcing us to react to that so that we become more relevant. Another two things I'll share on that is the need for us as trainers to be much more specialized and niche down and have a really good idea of our avatar client much more than ever, because we have more and more and more consumers now interested in exercise and moving. We just can't be generalists anymore. So the idea of niching down to your true specialty has really morphed over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, you could be a generalist and be completely fine in this industry. It's harder, much harder today. And there's much more opportunity today. And I think that will be the case once we get on the other side of this pandemic, to not just train online, but train hybrid and to have opportunity in studios and boutiques that were not the face of the industry 10, 15 years ago. It is today. So those are some of the things that really pop out for me in terms of how our industry has shifted for trainers. I could go on and on, but from a director standpoint, those are some mega ones that stand out.
Yeah, I'm probably taking a little bit of from Derek's questions that he has as well, but I just feel like I have to ask, since it's a perfect continuation. You know, it's one of the things that I feel maybe it comes to mind for trainers is being generalist. Being a generalist potentially puts you in a position where you feel like you can win more customers, because, you know, if they want to do boxing or they want to do whatever it may be, yeah, I can do that for you. How do you kind of view being a generalist versus a specialist, and being able to still maintain a big book of clients?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll say this from a recommendation standpoint. If you are sort of a generalist, and let's say a trainer or a coach, privately owned studio, online, or wherever you are, if you are a generalist, it is really more challenging today more than ever to really build a substantial book, unless you're at a facility that has a really high sales volume operation in place where your client passive leads just kind of fall into your lap. I listened to a great presentation by Thomas Plummer, if you guys know who he is, years ago, and it was very inspirational. He said, look, if you are a generalist, you are really putting yourself in a position where you will be out of business in the next 5 to 10 years, out of business. You have to specialize. And here's why. Over the last 6 years, health club and studio and online consumers has grown, and now it's starting to level off. Okay. And so and now we're forced to differentiate. If we're not different than these consumers right now, there's too much competition at this point not to stand out. So to answer your question more succinctly, Kalen, you want to sit down and decide who is your avatar client, build around that, and you will build your book much quicker with fewer leads who you can attract than a wider base with a ton of bloody waters that you're swimming in. It's just a much quicker way to build your book. It takes work, but it's very worth the effort. And from a director standpoint, we do the same thing as a health club. Like even though we're a big health club, we had to niche down our training services to say a much more specific message to our clients instead of a broad stroke message. And we saw much more growth.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
If I may jump in with one just quick question.
Hit it, man.
Yeah, sorry. So it's just a quick clarification, because for me, I think I understand what avatar client means, but does that basically mean who is the ideal client for your services?
Exactly. You would sit down and say to you, and you got to go 1 or 2 or 3 levels deep. It's the ideal client there. So it was, okay, is it male, female? What's the age group? What are their interests and hobbies? Maybe they're post-pregnancy. Maybe there's someone who's triathlon. Maybe there's someone who is an entrepreneur, super busy and has a time-tight schedule. And you can't just do male, female, gender, age. It's still too broad. What are their interests, hobbies, likes, dislikes? Then thirdly, what are the barriers that they have to overcome to stay active that you can overcome because of your service? You got to go 3 levels deep. Then all of a sudden you have this perfect mold. I call an avatar, and then once you know what that avatar is, you can say, okay, all my marketing, all my messaging, my programming will solve the solution for this particular avatar instead of 20 different kinds of avatars. Then your message is diluted.
Yeah, that's huge. Do you see that there's benefits in having an avatar in terms of the process that you run as well as a trainer, and like headspace and that? It seems like maybe there might be some operational efficiencies from that too.
Well, yeah, there absolutely is. Well, let's start with programming in and of itself. Your programming should cater to your avatar. For example, we have a program here at the facility we call Total Body Shaping. There's one key focus to make you like look incredible. So we target women, we target Gen X women who are mothers, kind of like, and please apologize. It's a sort of like the traditional soccer mom kind of a client who comes in mid-morning, wants to look great. And we target our programming specifically around that. We have a ton of them who come to our facility, and our programming is geared toward that. So if our programming is not making that avatar smile, then we need to reconsider how we do that. Also, our marketing talks to it. So our messaging speaks a certain message, and our coaches, they coach a certain way to make the avatar happy and smile. And the way we intake them and our CRMs and the messaging that they get once they sign an agreement is all unique and specific to that avatar. So it really does affect all of your operations if you know who your avatar client is.
Yeah, that's huge. And for a new trainer maybe who's or a studio owner as well who hasn't taken the time yet in order to create an avatar or an area of focus and specialization, is there an area that you kind of see as maybe an up and coming trend for them to look into, as this could be an interesting place in order to make sure that you're ahead of the curve and this is the type of specialization that could be focused on?
Yeah, you know that I've heard this question quite a bit. That's quite challenging to pinpoint to one like key thing. But I will say this: there is still a growing population of people who want to feel younger again. They want to feel young. They want to be mobile. They want to be pain free, and they want to be independent as they age. And I think that there is a very big opportunity for that particular age group. So we're talking growing, later stage Gen X into very young baby boomer, probably later stage Gen X, and they've got the disposable income to do something about it. The other one is going to be your, I'll use us for an example. We have our whole Look Better program. When we say, okay, 90% of all the people who come in the facility, they want to look really good. And so, but the problem is there's so many programs that make this promise. It's hard to say, okay, how's that message different? So for us, what we do is we put a very unique nutrition spin on it that has like all these behavior modification things that are weaved on top of it that creates this journey for these people going through this program. So I guess to answer your question, I think a big opportunity is in a couple spaces. One is going to be for someone who wants a convenient but very personal service. And if I could just have another minute to explain that deeper. There are so many streaming services right now. There are so many online training services right now that are automated, on demand, push, play, and go, that there's a very unique opportunity right now for people who need accountability, where when they say, I want to do that thing, they get a personal phone call from you, not an automated drip campaign that gets triggered. Maybe there is one, but a personal phone call. You ask certain things about them. You learn specific things about their background, hobbies, interests that you can then use to gift them things later on, reward them for things that's unique to them and not all of your clients. That is a very unique opportunity right now for people who are looking for accountability. So I would really suggest people listening to this say to yourself, okay, one way to have a unique approach is to defy the odds of this world of technology, of automation, and do anti-automation. And that is do much more personal touch points than other broader services can offer.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. And I think that's very, very different from what a lot of organizations are striving for. So this is definitely a way in order to differentiate yourself. And as a trainer with less resources than a Peloton or some of these other larger organizations, it makes it much easier in order to be able to compete with personalization rather than huge technology teams and automation.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Cool. I'm really loving this line of dialogue, but Derek's got all the questions on these ones. So Derek, maybe we can just jump into your line of questions already now, and we can just pick it up from here. Come back to mine later.
Yeah. So I really like the conversation about generalist versus specialist? And I know we've talked about it a bit already, but I guess as we're talking about trends in the industry or moving towards this specialized environment, are there any kind of like some kind of niches in the industry that you see that maybe there's different types of certifications that are coming about in the industry, or even just specific areas such as breathing exercises, etc., that people are moving towards right now?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of mindfulness that's starting to move forward. A lot of people are looking to be mindful. So if you're someone who is a mind-body expert, you have a very unique opportunity to get clients that way. And then, so you actually mentioned just now about like breathing and mindfulness and range of motion and fascial release. Like that is one area that's getting a lot of interest today. Great company out there in Arizona, FST, Fascial Release Therapist Group. They do great job in this space. Let's see. Another one would also be, I hate to bounce around here because there's so many opportunities right now. Let me answer your question more broadly. What you have to do is try to quiet the noise, and find out where there are holes and where there are gaps. I'd actually would not try to focus too much on what is the up and coming thing to piggyback on. I would actually try to find out what are people not talking about and not mentioning, and be a futurist in thought. And because you're more than likely to discover the gold that way than to try to piggyback on something that's trending now. That's a very high potential thing. I'll give you, let me give you an example of what one of our coaches has been doing in that space. And that is actually the FST. So they do fascial release therapist. There's very few people who are doing that around here right now. This particular trainer, who since moved away, is going to come back next year, built an amazing book because she saw a gap in our market. Nobody was talking about being mobile enough. Nobody was talking about how the fascial tissue and how it impacts mobility, stress, sleep, and she grabbed onto something that people were not talking about. So I hate to kind of throw your question sideways, Derek, but I'm gonna answer it by saying try to look
Perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, if you're gonna throw it sideways to me, then Sheldon, I'm gonna come with a follow up. Then, so
Yes.
if you're if you're talking about some of these trends that you basically talked about how you're very experienced. You've been in the industry for a long time. You've seen definitely trends happen over the years. You've already talked about them with Kaylin a bit earlier with the smarter training, social media trainer specializations. From what we're talking about, it seems like those are here to stay.
Yeah.
I guess I would have two questions. If you're talking about finding those areas that are going to be up and coming, well, one, they're difficult, and if you do have those in mind, I'm not sure you're willing to share, but I guess two parts to the question. Do you kind of see an upcoming trend that maybe is not here yet? And then on the back end of that question, for a lot of individuals who are just getting started, it's difficult for them to find the resources to speak with people in the industry to find out about these up and coming, or to brainstorm. Do you have any kind of recommended resources to get that information?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, going to something like this is always a smart idea. You want to put it on your personal calendar as a trainer to attend conference. Right now, there are more and more virtual and online webinars that share very valuable information like today. Just be mindful about putting it in your calendar. Your certification committee will probably be another great resource of this type of information. It could be ACE, could be NASM, could be ACSM. They usually will have some direct ties to ways to just get information for you that you already have a certification for, most likely, and to tap directly into that. I happen to be certified by ACE. I'm happy with the information I get from them, but I personally do dig a bit deeper. I'm also, our club and our team are members of URSA as well. So from a business perspective, we go to them for a lot of great information. So as far as things that are trending right now and things to kind of consider, the big one right now is being able to take your first. This is not a modality as much as it is an operation. It's being able to make your training hybrid. So one thing is to hybrid your training, be able to train people in a live group setting and stream simultaneously is one thing to consider. That is an operational thing. As far as modality, there is a sort of what I'm seeing, a leveling off trend of high intensity interval training that I'm starting to see for some reason, and starting to see an uptick in what is considered corrective training and training for function. That seems to be climbing up the ladder significantly right now. We're seeing more certifications specifically for that, and there are more people who are hiring trainers right now specifically for that reason in big boxes. So if you're someone who's considering getting some certifications or specializing, the area of correctives is quite huge right now because of growing populations, getting older and wants to be independent. And we're seeing more people who are considered in the world of physical therapy and the world of biomechanics who are seeping into the world of fitness right now and are forcing us to legitimatize out what we're saying much more. And so we have to be smarter trainers right now and look to go into that space. So if I had to say one place is key, that's one area that stands out for me.
Got you. And Kaylin, I do want to give it back to you after this one last question, just because we're still on the topic. So my last question before I pass it back to Sheldon would be is oftentimes a good place to start with a solution is identifying problems, right? So do you see any kind of super common problem in the industry at the moment that maybe, if we think about it more from a problematic perspective, that will basically give people idea to start thinking of the solutions?
Yeah, there's just like any industry, there are some hurdles that we have to overcome. I mean, the most obvious is that currently we are still trying to maneuver our way through this pandemic. I can kind of go on and on about what that means. I think we have some stuff to talk about there as well. One thing that stands out for me, because I hire trainers here and I look for certain things. And one of the biggest things that I find myself upskilling constantly with someone who's a great person and a great candidate is the notion that the education in certifications and curriculum in colleges and university are not teaching them the soft skills of building a book and business. We just don't see it enough in our industry. There's far too much elbow grease on ex-phys, movement, biomechanics, and we have to have that. However, unless you are being hired by a facility that will handle those X's and O's for you, you are left kind of flapping around trying to find resources to manage your business and your operations. And we need to do much better to fix that. Otherwise, it's very challenging to build a career as a personal trainer. So for that reason, that's one thing. I do believe that we need more curriculum that teaches our trainers business stuff that's not so much from I don't know, these sort of random resources that kind of pop into your social media feeds about how to build your book that are very legitimate, that start from ground zero, that start from university curriculum and from our certification committees as part of our learning. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, that's huge. And maybe before I jump into the other questions, just piggybacking off of that, one of the things that you mentioned is the soft skills are incredibly important in order to make sure that you're going to be successful. What do you kind of see as like as an organization? You're obviously inheriting, maybe a trainer who doesn't have those skills. So as an operator and a director who might be in the position that you're in, how do you kind of go about introducing that? Because when you inherit that, it's your problem. You have to fix it, right? So I imagine that you create a curriculum of your own in order to be able to try and address those items. How have you kind of taken the process of solving that?
Yeah, good question. And for anyone who's listening now or later on manager, director, the first step is actually hiring the right people who you recognize has some of these soft skills that are a bit teachable. Some of the things that I do look for are these elements of emotional intelligence. They are good communicators. They listen really well. They process really well. They study body language really well. They do really well at being conversation starters and are great at follow-up and great at personalizing follow-up, and are quite convincing in their demeanor and when they talk. So there's a list of things that I look for, and not everybody comes in with all of these skills. they come with some of them. And so when I identify these skills of emotional intelligence, we have what's called a 30, 60, 90. And then I think many companies might have something like this. It is essentially a 90-day strategy to upskill you to a minimum standard of competency that we expect to see. And as part of our 30, 60, 90, we run our new hires through sort of a trial period where they're practicing and learning these soft skills. And in the beginning, typically that requires some hand-holding on our end to teach them this. So I'll give you one example, so it gives you some clarity. One of them is networking skills, your ability to network. And when we network here, we have what's called like a first, second, third tier network, and it all starts with a game of numbers. We say, okay, for you to get one client, you will need to have 3 people who experience your service as a coach, trainer, whatever it may be, small group or live. You need 3, because 1 out of 3 people is probably going to convert and say, I want to be with you. Well, to get those 3, you're going to need at least 12 people who are considered a lead that you are actively in contact with in some way, shape, or form. To get those 12 leads, you're going to need another 48 opportunities that you are actively nurturing in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, you won't get that one client. So we then say, all right, let's start from the very top and teach you how you get those 48 opportunities. And so we have a list of things that cater to that trainer's strength. One of them, for example, would be, let's see, what's a good example? Oh, it would be actually using our, we do like lobby time. And in our lobby time, we go up in the lobby, and what we do is when people kind of walking by conversing, we teach the trainer sentence starters, asking people about themselves, a general introduction, what are you interested in? And we actually we role play this. Then we get the trainer in front of people and they actually do this. And we say, don't be afraid to fail. If some people reject what you're doing, it's no big deal. We just have to practice these skills. And they rehearse taking any name, the gender, where they met the person, and learning how to document that in their miniature CRM that they have. And we label that as opportunities, and they see how that works. And then we teach them the second layer, which is the lead. And that is when someone has had a meaningful conversation with you that lends to them saying, well, they're interested in your service in some way, shape, or form. You learned about their goal, their need, their why. And they learn how to kind of manage that, and then how to do follow-ups. An email follow-up, a personal follow-up, a phone call follow-up. We'll sit on the phone with them. We'll give them an actual script. We role play, and then they go live. So that is, and then from there, from opportunity to lead to demo, the demo is easy. They come in, they do a training session. We have a whole process for that and convert. But we teach them those 4 layers in role play and do, role play and do. And it does take work from a director standpoint, because without that skill, you could know how to coach people all day long. You could teach people all the ways to correct ankle mobility all day long, and to work on core stability. But if you cannot network and you're running your own business inside of the business, you're dead in the water. You really are. So we hone in on that heavily as part of our 30, 60, 90 process. And there's about 5 elements to our 30, 60, 90, and that's one of them. And at the end of 90 days, once we feel like they're competent and all that, we kind of give them their wings and let them go, train.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, it sounds like I liked when you said that. Yeah, you're training them to run their own business. I guess I was listening to these skills. It's exactly what it sounded like. If you want to launch a successful business, you can't just have the great product. You have to make sure that people know about you, and you're creating either a brand, but in this case, a personal brand. That's huge. Awesome. So I want to kind of like take a couple steps back and dig into some of the things that you mentioned within your introduction, because it's great to be able to hear all of this awesome recommendations and some of the things that you're seeing within the industry and trends in that. However, I imagine that when like you said, when you started as a trainer, probably had a lot of water behind the ears. I think that's the phrase, wet behind the ears. Yeah. And you mentioned that one of the early things that you did as well was, you got involved in and brought on in the international space, getting into Les Mills. How exactly did that process actually get started? Did they reach out to you? Did you just reach out to them, fill out an application? What's the process of the trainer who's looking to kind of go underneath that kind of program look like?
Well, that was an opportunity that was a third-party company that needed talent in the field to help train instructors and all that stuff. And there are opportunities that exist like that today, not just Les Mills and other entities, including training. But with that specifically, the way it happened was, and this is for anybody who's part of a big box that has group fitness. When I started training people, I was just training people one-on-one, and my focus was strength training, and that's what I did. But a friend of mine, I also studied martial arts, and a friend of mine said that, hey, you need to take this class called Body Combat. I had no idea what it was. It was a kickboxing class, basically. So I thought we were going to be in there and, leg warmers and, Jane Fonda kicking and all this stuff. But I went in there and I got shredded, man. It was great music, great energy. And I said to myself, let me think about this one here. And then I noticed that the room was absolutely packed. And I said, you know what? I'm still trying to build up this book. I think if I just get in here and work this, that not only will I do something I like, but I'm going to be in front of a lot of people that I consider opportunities for me to train. It's exactly what I did. So I got trained in this group fitness program. They taught me how to do it. I got in front of the room, and my book grew 25% within 3 months just by doing that alone.
Wow.
But I got good at it. I was good at teaching. And then, yes, a big mass email just went out to the whole nation saying, look, we're looking for the top talent. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to give this thing a try. And I sent in a video. They flew me out to Chicago for an audition with a bunch of people. I made the cut. And then I started working, traveling around the country, training instructors how to teach this format. Then they really liked my work. And then it ended up being, say, look, let's send you over to be on the video, like a video presenter, and all this stuff started happening, which led to then international work. Well, I would go to different countries and train their trainers how to do different trainings, modules, programming. And it gave me a really wide network of really good people. And it opened up my eyes to the rest of the world, how they think down in South America and in Brazil, what their operations are like, how are they doing over there in Europe, and how the European countries work and how they think and how they operate, down in the South Pacific, Central America, Canada. And when that happened, it opened my eyes up to people who are really a lot smarter than I am, who had influential things to say and do, and I learned from. So from that, I found that group exercise, group fitness is something that a trainer, is that part of your facility, do not ignore that opportunity. It is tremendous. It has a huge upside to be involved in. And plus it helped me make some powerful connections with people who help coach me and lead me, essentially. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, what a amazing accomplishment. I'm sure there was a lot of bumps and hills and valleys as you went on this journey as well. That probably wasn't all rainbows and sunshines. Maybe so that this way we can have some of the individuals who are early on within their career avoid some potholes. What were some of the early mistakes that you made in your career, and you're learning from this?
Well, I think we mentioned it a lot, so I won't get into too much, but obviously I kind of went into this thing being like, hey, I'll help anyone and everyone. Just give me clients, And so that was a mistake. That was a big mistake. Also, I went into this thing assuming if I get certified, they will come. And I also did not learn those real key soft skills in the beginning about how to build a book. I didn't really know from a business perspective what it took to get a book. I didn't have a goal in mind. Do I need 20 clients, 30 clients, 40? What's this going to mean 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? I wasn't thinking ahead enough. And so for anyone here who's early in their career, one of the biggest things I'll tell you right now is start the work now to build out the avatar. Do it today. If you want to think about this, just start looking at the industry, look at what different kind of modalities are out there. Think about what you're personally passionate about, what will get you excited on Sunday night to go to bed and get fired up tomorrow to train like and do and train with. You might not get there this year or next year, but start working on it now, because it'll make a huge difference a year or two down the line from now. Also, start to think short-term, medium-term, long-term goal. business-wise, where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now. You cannot go day to day, week by week. Does it mean you stay online? Do you stay virtual? Do you go studio? Do you stay in the big box? And then you have to work towards something. I wasn't there very early in my career, and it took me a minute to get there. So those are two tremendous mistakes that I made. If I could turn back time, I would have done that much sooner. It was not really about programming so much and certifications. It was certainly those two things: niche down and really plan ahead from a business perspective.
Awesome. And from a maybe so that I just want to jump in on the both of them, but we obviously don't have all the time in there. Is there maybe some resources that for you when you first started off that were kind of the aha moment that kind of put you down the path of being able to address those things?
There wasn't a specific resource back then that said, "Ooh, that's it." Here was the biggest thing that woke me up. Someone flat out told me to start reading. That was it. I was not reading back then. Now, honest to goodness, I'll go through a book once every 2 weeks at this point. And it was when I started doing that, I organically flocked to the places that I knew I needed to grow on business, operations, startup, habit building, retention. The more often I read and the more I committed to a schedule, the more I started to niche down and consider who I wanted to train. Books. It wasn't even so much a certain certification committee or an association or a person. It was reading. If anybody here is not a book reader on development, I highly, highly recommend you get yourself on a cadence. I don't like to actually sit there and physically read. I'm a listener. So I got my Audible app, and on my commutes, I listen to a book, and I try to commit to a book a week. I can't seem to do it. But 2 weeks, I've been able to pull that off. That was the biggest differentiator for me by far.
Yeah, that's huge. Awesome. Yeah, that's big. Obviously, reading is going to help with the knowledge in that. But maybe what we can do as well is also kind of highlight some of the accomplishments that you've had as well. For those who haven't had a chance in order to see you speak, I've had the chance in order to see you speak at URSA and also joining us on these webinars and providing knowledge for everybody. So let's say that you definitely very well accomplished, and congratulations on all of the success and that you've had in your career. For yourself, I think one of the things that is important is always to kind of like reflect and celebrate these things. Maybe we don't personally take the moment in order to do that. When you reflect on it yourself, though, what would you say has been one of the proudest or biggest accomplishments that you've had in your career?
The proudest accomplishment I've had in my career. Wow. I think I mentioned it before. Even though I mentioned Les Mills a couple times, it's not so much Les Mills. They're an unbelievable company that does so much. But it was the opportunity. The most proudest moment was the opportunity to say I had a chance to touch internationally the world of fitness. That to me still blows my mind today, that I had a chance to have development and work with people like in Russia and in Brazil and in Belgium and in France and in New Zealand, and even though it was under the umbrella of Les Mills, that to me was something that one day retire from this thing will say that's one of the proudest things I've ever done, was to say I had a chance to work with people on an international level to see what they think and how they learn and what's important to them. And I know it comes rare to people in this industry, but I'm very, very blessed that I ever got that kind of opportunity. I don't work with Les Mills anymore, but I'm forever grateful to them for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially when you think of training being so local. It usually happens within your community, 7 minutes away from your home. If you're going into the facility, so to be able to just have an opportunity in order to go international and see how these trends impact the international floor, it's super cool. So
yes, sir.
Yeah, so what we have in the segment as well is what we call our operations deep dive, and we already had a chance in order to go into a couple of items already. Maybe this isn't a chance in order to go a little bit a little bit deeper into, some of these items that you brought up already, or maybe you have something else in mind. But the idea of this part of the segment is to talk about a area that maybe was either a accomplishment that you and your team were able to, work towards, and what was the process of being able to do that, or a challenge that you've had to overcome, and how your team was able to address that challenge and to be able to persevere through.
Okay, let's see. Well, I'll start with the challenge, and I'll be relevant to what's going on today with our the pandemic. And I know that people listening today we're all in probably different situations. Your state, your country may have different levels of restrictions that you're in, which can highly impact that. For Pennsylvania, where we are here, we were given the green light to allow, with limited access under CDC guidelines, attendance in our facility in it was early July. It was early July. So a huge challenge we had was, okay, how do we win back our client base who has kind of faded away because of this pandemic, with all of our efforts to engage them online? And we got this great content from a guy named Justin Tamzet, who is part of the active management group out of Australia. And he said, you need to do a FOMO campaign, And so I never heard the word FOMO before. I wasn't sure what that was, And he said, FOMO is fear of missing out. So we're kind of like, all right, let's think about that here. So we upstarted this huge campaign, and it helped us get our personal training department from about 50-something% capacity up to about 65% capacity now, year over year, and growing rapidly. Essentially, what we did is we wanted people to remember what they missed about being with us face to face and engaging us live. And it was driven heavily by our technology, using platforms like Virtual Gym, and using some of the other resources we had in the club. To cut to the chase here, we started a campaign where every week we're dripping on our members a message saying how much we missed you. We hope you're doing safe and well. And here's what's going on at the club. Yeah. But also let's hear it from our members. We didn't want them to hear the message from us. We wanted our own members doing the talking for us. So we got a ton of testimonials from our members saying, I'm back in the facility. Things are great. They're doing so much to keep it clean. We kind of miss everyone else who's not in right now. So we hope you're doing well. And we'd stick it into a weekly drip campaign. And we supplemented that with a weekly call from the coach, a bi-weekly call from the coach, personal check-in, and a monthly call from management. And as we started doing this revolving door of weekly drips of FOMO campaign, personal phone call, and these were purely the people who were frozen because of COVID. All of a sudden, we are seeing this uptick in engagement, this uptick in people coming back to the facility, and an uptick of people who want to subscribe to our virtual membership purely because of this campaign. That was a tremendous win, and we're still in the middle of this actual campaign to this day. So fear of missing out campaign we found works tremendously well.
Awesome. Maybe we can jump into that as well. So for those who haven't heard of the term FOMO and fear of missing out, what that means from a marketing and sales perspective.
Yeah. So obviously, before we had the doors shut, everyone was engaged in a certain way. They had the coach, they had the people they trained with, just being in the facility, friends. There's more to this whole component than just exercise and working out. I think we all know that. People will stick. There's three different things that motivate people. One is a high level of autonomy to choose your path. The other one is feeling like you can do it. And the third one is being around people who care about you. That's the glue that retains people, right? And that was shattered when our doors were shut. So we had to quickly act. And then what we found out is we were too focused on, let's get people training online. Let's get people training online. Let's get people training online. And we had to bring people back to the original feeling of what it was like to be in the facility. So we put that back on the forefront, where we had them seeing familiar faces again. And we started saying words like, hey, we miss you guys here at the smoothie bar in our Monday mid-morning get-togethers. Or we would say, hey, your coach Tony misses you and hopes you're doing well. Stay safe. Here's a message from Tony. Here's Tony doing a video message. and it's a different message than you got to start working out again. It is a I miss you message. And what happens is the narrative starts to change, and then the emotional switch starts to kick in for us. And they feel like they're missing something. The people who are currently engaging us in the facility right now are getting all this great experience, and because they're not in here yet, they miss that. And so we're bringing that in front of them. And if they don't want to be in a facility because they're afraid or because of COVID, we certainly do have the online training option, but that campaign is what fear of missing out is. It is the nugget of the emotional connection that people need to have, and putting that at the forefront of your marketing.
Yeah, that's huge. And you kind of alluded to it as you were going through as well, at least components of it, when you were talking about kind of the sequence where there's the monthly manager call, and I think you said it was the weekly call from the coaches. Can you talk a little bit more about the structure of the campaign, so that if someone's thinking about building their own campaign and hasn't done something like this, how they can approach it?
Yeah. So what we did is we had to segment our client base. So we had people who are currently active and engaged, people whose accounts were frozen for other reasons like medical or traveling or whatever, and people who are frozen but committed to returning at a date, and then people who are frozen because of fear of COVID. So what we did is we segmented. Once we were able to segment, we knew how to personalize the campaign. So this campaign was specifically those people who are frozen for COVID, fear of being in the facility. We targeted them specifically. And so we just did a mail merge. We didn't use constant contact or anything like that, because we wanted the message to come from us specifically, not from some automated system. So we put all these names in a spreadsheet: name, email, program, their coach, and we built what's called a basic mail merge. If anybody knows Excel or you can do a mail merge, just look it up. And we built out 8 weeks of email content. And we said in each week, we're gonna have a different message. Week 1 is, we miss you. We hope you're safe. We hope you're healthy. Here's the message from Sarah Thibodeau about what's going on in the club. Week 2 is a weekly tip of how to stay active at home, what's going on to stay safe around COVID. And one more thing about, here's your options if you're thinking about coming back, a message from your trainer. Each week has a message. We pre-built that out. And so when you copy and paste that message in the mail merge, it replaces name with their actual name, the program they're in with their real program, and their real coach by using mail merge. So they see an actual message that looks like it's specifically for them. They get it every Tuesday at 1:00, like clockwork. That's done in conjunction with a personal phone call from the trainer. And we give the trainer a basic script of check in, engage, do not force them or try to over convince them to come back in. It is just a health check is what you're doing. So it's not, and then from there, let the conversation organically come around about their options to train if they're ready to come back. They do it every 2 weeks. We try to do the weekly commit, but we're finding it's tough to micromanage the trainers to do it every week. So we found bi-weekly was just a better commitment for us. Mm-hmm. And then when the coach makes the call, it is mandatory that they go into their roster. Every coach has a roster spreadsheet of their clients, and they type in the outcome of the call. Left the voicemail, did the script, or had a great conversation. This is where they're at. So when we as managers go in and do our monthly call, we look into their spreadsheet, see the last touch point, and can have a relevant phone call with them when we call them. There's 4 managers who make this call. So from the frozen client's perspective, who's COVID, they get this weekly email, feels personal, this bi-weekly call from the coach, and a monthly call from the manager. It's like, wow. And it's not overwhelming. They feel like it is truly a heartfelt check-in. And when it is time for them to come back into facility, they're not going to go off and train with some third-party on-demand fitness program, and they're going to come to us, you see. And that's been our strategy, and it's been working out quite well.
And Caitlin, maybe an audience question just based off of that, because I think it kind of goes hand in hand. So we had a question from Lisa prior to today, which basically was talking about the facilities are back open, at least on some capacity, and they're starting to offer online Group X classes, but obviously they're having their issues with, having full memberships or having full participation in Group X, which is kind of natural. You kind of mentioned, how are we keeping in contact with individuals who haven't come back into the facility yet? But of the people who are coming back into the facility, so the members that are coming back, is there a way to utilize them to try to get other members to come back to the facility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, it's like, what do they call that? It's social proof. Social proof is a huge factor when it comes to people participating in or purchasing a service. It's like when you walk by a restaurant that's completely empty and you walk by the one that's really full. If you're going to choose one, you're probably going to go to the one that's full because people love this restaurant. And so people are very, very drawn to a message from their peers, sometimes not the company in and of itself. So social media is so powerful. Yes, indeed. So what you want to do is try to engage the people who are coming in, really happy with the service so far, and are going to say good things, and get them and do a little interview. We have a series of interviews right now in our phone campaign where we just got the camera out and we said, okay, we're going to ask you 3 questions. One is, how good do you feel now that you're back? How do you feel about the facility's cleanliness and what we're doing? And what do you say to anybody at home who's still on the fence about coming in? Go ahead and just talk freely. And we just film it, and we get their permission. And then what we do is we just build a library and we push that out in our campaign. It's just more powerful than us giving the message. They'll listen more to peers. So I would suggest that you start just engaging your current members now and asking their permission to get video testimony on something like that to send to the people at home not ready to come in yet, because they'll listen more to them more readily.
And if I may, a follow-up, just because it's perfect with other audience questions as well. I think the other audience question was coming from Janelle Stevenson, but she was basically asking, when we're talking about advertising, obviously small studios have basically limited funds, but even larger, huge facilities obviously have their struggle with funds at the moment. You had mentioned, shooting these videos for advertising. Obviously, if you already have kind of there's different levels and kind of different extremes you can take that towards, but there's the opportunity to do that with just a mobile phone. Obviously, you can get professional work as well and kind of scale that towards the more professional end. But curious to know if there's any other tips you may have from like a limited funds point of view that are cheap and easy to execute for some of these facilities.
Yeah, so I think what you can do is, first of all, take it like for example, we were given minimal to no budget with our training department to do this FOMO campaign. We just did it internally. We just used an Excel spreadsheet. That's all we did, an Excel spreadsheet and our regular Outlook email. And this is our retention campaign, not new, but we already have a list of the emails. It was just a matter of how do we do a massive outreach and do it in a drip, so it drips. Now you can pay a lot of money to have a drip campaign pumped out to an email list. We literally just use a mail merge, and that works really, really well. As long as you have the contact list and an Excel spreadsheet, you can do a mail merge, and it will send out the information to everybody that looks personalized. Just use a phone. Just use an iPhone and film what you want to film. You don't need to get a very expensive camera. And I actually believe personally that feels more authentic and organic and natural than some highly produced, staged video, because it'll look too contrived. It wants to feel real and raw. And that to me is more powerful and relevant.
Yeah, and I guess piggybacking, everybody's on tight budgets, especially during these days with COVID. One of the things that I've been curious about and have been trying to just soak up information is, how businesses have been adapting, and we've had a chance in order to jump into this during the early days when you joined us for the last webinar. How in the last few months and weeks that have passed since we last spoke, how have you guys, how has it evolved, and have you guys rethought your some of the things that you guys have been doing and strategies since the first time that you joined us and we're going through the early problems?
Yeah, the most blatant and obvious stuff is just getting our business online. I know a lot of people are doing that. We're mainly brick and mortar. We went online, streaming our workouts. That's too easy. The biggest thing was we took a much bigger focus on retention than acquisition. We had to. So because the new member and new clientele is thinning out a little bit here, you know? And so what we're doing is when we actually do see someone who is a new client, our retention efforts have like quadrupled. We building out a whole new CRM at this point. So when someone is like interested in our service and says, I want to do that, they're just getting much more relevant and regular information. It affirms their purchase right away, immediate follow-up when they make the agreement, a very frictionless handoff to the coach, a much more clear journey of what it's going to look like in the next 6 months. We weren't doing this before. We were doing it sort of, but now it's at a much higher effort because we know that these new opportunities are coming less and less and less. And that is driven heavily by technology through our CRM.
Mhm.
We are featuring much more like the Virtua Gym to supplement the offer when someone does need to freeze or cancel or needs to be away for a little while. Their immediate solution we have is great. We have this built out for you as a membership to downgrade on until you're ready to come back to retain them. So the biggest operational difference we've had in our training department was a higher retention effort and taking a little less energy in the acquisition. And that is actually good anyway in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. And with that as well, I am kind of piggybacking off of, just kind of the circumstances, and I imagine the environment that's happening with COVID. When I've been listening to other other webinars, one of the things that tends to be one of the similar trends is organizations are saying this isn't the time now in order to think about growth and profitability. This is about doing everything that we can in order to just finish out the year with break even. And I'm curious, in kind of circumstances where this is kind of the trend nationally, I what does this look like for creating motivation for yourself and your team during these much different times?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to motivating your staff and getting them to buy into anything, the first thing that we at least try to do is get our staff to be involved in the decision-making process as early as possible. So we present them with the need to act. We may say, hey, look, last year you were all seeing rosters looking like this, revenue was looking like this, your income was here, the clients you were helping was looking like this. Or this is where we are at now. And we ask them to participate in our meetings. You guys tell us, what do you think we can do to help turn the tide here? Let's do a whiteboard. Let's write it all down. Let's come up as a team. And what happens is our team feels like they are helping us make a decision as managers and much more bought into whatever we end up doing from an operational standpoint. Otherwise, they're going to feel like all these things are thrown at them to do that they're forced and they weren't part of. And it really does help with their motivation to act because the problem is made very clear. They verbally admit there's an issue and they have a commitment to how we can do something to change. Then over the course of time, as we're working on it, like for the FOMO campaign we talked about, we constantly updating them on where we're at with this and how it's worked. Do you guys have any feedback that you can have on how it's going to work? And they feel like they're always part of it. So for anyone listening in as a manager, director, you've got to motivate your staff to act, make them part of the process at some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, these protocols are going to be thrown at them left and right. They're not making as much money right now, and they feel out of control. So give them some control, and then you're going to see more buy-in, and the waves will move in the right direction.
Awesome. Yeah, that's big. I love that. And then, yeah, just because we're right at the top, maybe we have time in order to go into yeah, time flew on this one, huh? The hour went by super fast. Yeah, maybe the last question that we can end on as well is going to be more about just general advice that you received. What do you think, looking over the advice that you've gotten in the past? I know you brought up an organization. I think it was JT as well. Some of the help he's been giving the industry. what's some of the best advice that you've received, and you can share with others as well?
Yeah, I try to, go to webinars, attend conference. I still do my best to, reach out to the people who I've met here and there along the journey. One of my friends, I don't know if she'd ever listened to this, Emma Barry. I don't know if you know who she is, but she is a regular sort of, in the presenter circuit, and wrote the book. Oh gosh, I don't want to mess up the name of this book, about her being a rock star boutique. I'm probably messed that up, but I'll maybe you can forward that later. A good friend of mine, but I sat down and I talked with her in like a coaching session. I'm like, okay, I need to know what I need to be doing to just find the right path. And one of the biggest things that she said was keying in on like the one thing, and it actually brought me to two different books. The one book was The One Thing, and the other one was called Known. The One Thing and Known. And those two books helped me realize that I can't try to multitask and try to be all things to all people, even as a manager and director. And it really changed the shape of how I work on a day-to-day, how I operate, and what things I say yes and no to. That was an excellent advice. So if you guys ever want to read a book, anyone listening, read The One Thing and read Known. They're really good books that help you funnel in on what's important to you and what's going to help you 10, 20 years from now still be excited about your day-to-day efforts and having balance in your life. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, but that was a really powerful advice for me.
Yeah, that's big. I recently read The One Thing as well, and I think that was completely mind shifting as well, because you're always thinking, I just have to keep everything juggling and going at the same time, and this one really helped you focus on priorities. Also, while you were speaking as well, I looked up Emma Berry. I think the book is How Building a Badass Boutique.
There it is.
Well.
Building a Badass Boutique.
I love that.
Get that book. That's a plug for my friend Emma there.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sheldon, for taking the time in order to join us again. As always, your words of wisdom are super enlightening, and I hope help the audience members who are on the call today, and they took away some nuggets. But thank you so much for joining us again.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and hope we can do it again someday. Thank you.